Hey, how's it going? And today we're going to be exploring what an optional is, and this is loosely based off a tutorial that pi equals 3 did, which I found very helpful. But I want to just show you what we've got here, starting the game. So I've got a item spawner, and I've got a head device, and I've got a verse device. So I basically have 3 devices in the game. And what this does by using an optional in simple terms in the way I conceptualize it, it's a container that either holds a false value or another variable or asset. And if it doesn't have anything in it, then it returns a false. So in that sense, because I'm coming from visual scripting in Unreal Engine, I really see it as an IsValid. In Unreal Engine, they have something called IsValid, and it checks to make sure that there's something in the reference. And if there's nothing in the reference, then it fails. So that's kind of what I see the optional as, is sort of like an IsValid. So let me just show you what this looks like, what we've got here. I come into the game. Well, it's already, I got to end it and start it. Okay, so I come into the game and I go start, and what's going to happen is it's going to check to see that I have a valid player, something in my optional container, and if I do, in 10 seconds it's going to spawn an airstrike and give a message on the screen. Basically checking to see that there's something in the container, in the optional container, and if there is, then the logic of the game proceeds. If there's not, then nothing proceeds. So that's how I see it. I kind of see it as an IsValid, but that's my interpretation of it. So anyway, I'm going to just show you how I did this, and I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, I'm back, and to get started with this, we're just in a blank island template, and I'm just going to delete one of those spawners. There's 2 creative devices that we need for this. One is a HUD, so I'm just going to search for HUD and drag that into the scene. And then we just need an item spawner. And there's just a couple adjustments we need to make on these. Item spawner right here. I don't want it right on top of that. Oh, I accidentally dragged 2 in. Gosh, how did I do that? Okay. So there are our 2 devices. There's just a couple settings we need to make on this. So on this one, we're just going to, we don't want it to spawn item on timer. We don't want it to respawn. We don't want it to respawn. All we have to do is set the item that we want to respawn. And this is a lot of fun. I like to use the airstrike because it's fun and it's close to the top. And that's all we have to do. And then on our HUD device, we just type in a message, simple like, enjoy your airstrike today. And there is that. And that's all we have to do there. Now we can clear our search bar, come up here on this level, and we need to just create a verse device. So I'm going to come into the verse device, come up here, verse explorer, excuse me, add a new verse. We're going to just call this the same as what it'll be in our code. So I'm going to be optional underscore device, and we'll just go create, save. And it brings in this folder, it has our actual device. And what I like to do is just drag it onto the scene. We could just leave it there. And just to make sure everything's working, and just build the code for it and make sure there's no errors. So everything's good there. So now all we have to do is pop in our verse code. And I've already written that. So let me click this to get to it. And then I'll walk you through what this, as best I can, what this all is doing and my understanding of it. So I come from a background in Blueprint visual scripting in Unreal, so that's kind of my bias in terms of interpreting things. That's my frame of reference. So anyway, we come in here, and here's on our text editor, I have the code already written. And I would encourage you to keep a library of verse code so that you don't have to keep rewriting things. And look, I don't get any red squiggly lines, which is fantastic. So up here on the top is our modules, the usual suspects that we need. This creates our initial device, and it actually, since it's got creative device in there, it's actually inheriting from that class. And so we have access to everything that a creative device can do. Now here is our optional. And so we have a variable, it's new player, and it's going to be of the type optional. This makes it an optional when we put that up there, the question mark in front. And an optional, you can just think of it as a container, and it contains either a false or something else, which is usually a variable or a variable reference or object reference. And so in this sense, I really think of it as very similar to an IsValid node in Unreal Engine. And what that does is test to see whether there's an object reference in the variable or not. And if there isn't, it returns a false and fails. And if there is, then the code proceeds. And down here, if we jump ahead a little bit where it says if first player, new player is assigned to first player, this basically unpacks the container and checks to see whether there's something in there or whether there isn't. And if there is something inside, a reference inside, then it's true and the code proceeds. And if not, it's similar to an IsValid and it fails. So that's what's going to happen. If there is something, this is where we do basically our IsValid check. And if there is something in there, then we will make this call to this function down here that'll cause the HUD to display and spawn an item. If it's false, then we're just going to print out a string saying optional is false, call did not proceed. So there's that. So here is just our two creative devices that we're making a reference to. Here's our on begin play. We have a print string that starts the game. Then we make this assign player call. And here we're basically just using the play space module, the play spaces module, and we're grabbing the first player and we're assigning it to player 1, and then using this we're assigning it to new player. So that's what we're doing here. And that is, so what I'm doing is I'm deliberately setting this to fail, because with that array value set to 1, it's going to get the second player, not the first player. So this should fail the first time. I want it to fail to show you this. And then, so this message won't display. So when it does this check up here, it's going to be going this way first. It's going to assign the player and all that. But then it's going to fail because there's going to be a false in the container, and it won't be able to make this call. So let's just go ahead and save this. And then I'll minimize this. And we'll go ahead and build our code. And thank goodness we didn't get any errors. And all we need to do here is make our references. And then we'll go ahead and launch it. And I'll be back in just a second to test it. Okay, so we're back and we're ready, and I'll start game. And if everything is correct, what's going to happen is in 5 seconds we're going to get a message, a print string saying the optional is false, call did not proceed. So we're not going to get an item spawned, and we're not going to get any message or anything, because our optional was set to get player number 2, and our player is index value 0. So now let's go back here and go back into our code and fix that. So we can set this now to get player 1, which is our only player in the game. And we can go save and minimize this. And we can rebuild our code. No errors. We can end the game. And now I'll just have to push those verse changes, because that's all we changed. If all we're changing is the code, it updates a lot faster. And now we're ready and go back in. So what should happen is after 5 seconds now, we won't get that failed message, and we'll get our enjoy our airstrike and our airstrike. So hit start game. So do it twice, start game. So if it's working correctly, our optional container is going to say, yes, there is a player in there, and it will make the call. So we get our message and we get our airstrike. And so I got my airstrike here, and we are good to go. And it's off to the races. So anyway, I hope you found this helpful. Take care, have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.